Hi guys, I am Ellen from the Chili Dog. Welcome to my studio for another live lesson. Hi Diana, I'm glad you're joining me today. It was nice talking with you yesterday. I am joined again today by my special friend here in the basket, Dobby the cat. Have a hunch again, she'll probably sleep the whole time, but who knows, maybe she'll wake up and come say hi to us. So today we're going to kind of continue what we were working on last week. And that wasn't originally my plan, but I had a lot of people ask to see what happens in the next step of drop spinning. So last week we spun our singles yarn on a drop spindle. And this week we're actually going to take this yarn off the spindle and ply it with some other yarn that I have spun, another single. As we're getting going here, you are welcome to ask questions as I'm going along in the chat. I'm kind of far from my computer, so it's a little bit hard for me to see what it is saying, but I will try to respond to them the best I can as we're going along here. I hope everyone's having a great day. Thanks for joining me. And let's start doing some plying today. So as I said, last week we finished spinning our singles yarn. And this week we're going to ply. And plying just means we're going to twist two. In this case, we're just going to do two, but sometimes you could do more. You could maybe do 3 singles. Hey Tess, how are you doing? Thank you for Happy Mother's Day-ing me. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there as well. So today we're going to be plying. And plying just means you're twisting 1 or 2 or more singles together. To me, plying is a little bit easier because you don't have to fiddle with trying to get a nice even draft. And the yarn naturally wants to twist around each other. So when you have 2 singles, they naturally want to twist up around each other. So you can see there, even when I just kind of let the yarn relax a little bit, it twists around itself. So when it twists around itself, you'll remember last week when we were spinning, we spun our singles in Z twist. When it twists back around itself, and when you're plying, you're going to make S twist. And just a review in case you weren't here last week, Z twist means the slant in the twist slants like the center here of the letter Z. S twist in your yarn means the twist is slanting like the center here of the S. So we spun our singles in Z, we're going to ply in S. A lot of people were curious last week about how you get your yarn off of the spindle after you finish spinning so that you can ply. And typically I use a Turkish spindle and it creates these nice little center pull balls that, oh look, she moved. You can see her face now. I'm kind of surprised. She like sleeps there almost all day long, every day. So when you are spinning on a Turkish spindle, you come up with these nice little center pull balls that you can take off your spindle and then use the spindle again to ply those balls together. However, when you are using a drop spindle like this, you need to actually take the yarn off of here and put it onto something. And there's a few different ways to do this, and I wouldn't say there's any one right way or best way. It's kind of what works for you, which is really my philosophy in a lot of knitting and crafting projects. It's finding what works for you. So you could just spin this, take it off, and spin it into a ball. I find that when I do that, I get a little bit of a mess. If you have multiple spindles, you can actually ply from the spindle, and my friend Sandy and I were talking about this yesterday. You can put your spindle into the top of a handy dandy water glass here and have 2 of them. and the yarn just comes off nicely and you can spin from that. But today I'm going to actually ply on the same spindle that I spun my singles on, so we're going to need to take it off. When you're plying, gravity is really your friend because it's really easy. The yarns want to twist around each other. So gravity's your friend. I like to put my yarn on the ground, and to have gravity help me out a little bit, I'm going to actually wind my yarn from my spindle onto just this little cardboard tube that I took out of a ball of cotton yarn. When I got done, I just kept the little tube inside because it's got a nice weight to it. I'm going to wrap my yarn around there. So I'm going to use the water glass idea here. I'm going to stick my spindle in there. And then I am just going to, actually my spindle luckily comes apart. So I'm going to take the whirl off of it. And then I can just spin or just wrap it right here around my tube. I'm going to just wrap all the yarn off. So KJ, where are you watching from? I know where most of the other girls are from because I see a lot of my local friends around. Diana and Tess and Susan are all here in Tucson with me, sort of. I mean, they're here in Tucson. They're not with me in my house. I didn't realize just how much I spun last week. So what good projects are everyone working on today? Oh, toilet paper tubes, that's a good idea. And I like the idea of using your knitting needles in a shoebox because then you can make your own Lazy Kate. So I pulled off all my yarn here onto this little tube, and I'm going to set it on the floor. I don't need my water glass anymore. Another handy little trick, if you spin into a ball instead of onto a tube like that, the balls are kind of hard to manage. And again, I said gravity's my friend, so I usually have my yarn that I'm plying with on the floor, but those little balls dance around all over the place. So a couple little things you can use. One, you can put the ball in a yarn bowl and hook it on the side so that the ball of yarn doesn't run around all over the floor. Another thing you can do, if I'm using small little balls when I'm plying, I actually just use a little flower pot or 2 or 3, however many balls of yarn I'm plying together, and then put each one underneath it and pull the yarn up through, and then I can set it on the floor, and it holds the balls contained so they don't run away, and it keeps them from getting tangled. And you can see I just left the leader yarn that I was using here on my spindle. There's a little bit of fluff there. And I'll put the whirl back on. Now last week, when I was starting spinning, I'm going to take my leader all the way off here. When I started spinning, I was having a tough time wrapping the yarn around my spindle. And then I had an epiphany of something I do when I'm spinning on my wheel later that I wish I had said last week. So when you're attaching your leader yarn, it's really just this loop of, commercially manufactured yarn. You tie a knot in one end so you have a continuous loop. And then you make a lark's head knot around the spindle to hold the leader in place. And one thing I didn't think of last week, when I'm doing this on my wheel, I also go back around the other way. And that keeps the leader yarn from just spinning round and round. And then go back under that same. And of course, I'm having problems doing that here on camera. And I don't have a close-up camera with me today, so you can't exactly see well what's happening. Sorry about that. But then it makes it so that you can twist the yarn and the leader yarn doesn't spin quite so much. I learned that from my friend Mary at the yarn shop. She's a clever, clever lady. So I have my singles that I pulled off the spindle today, and then I also found in my stash of stuff, because I have a tough time throwing things away, just some scrap yarn, a scrap single that I had saved. Usually I would use it just for another leader, but we'll ply it today. And I actually wrapped this, I don't know if you can see, it is wrapped around a used bobbin from some thread. Hey Karen, how are you doing today? So I'm going to take my yarn bowl, my bobbin's in my yarn bowl. I'll set that on the floor because gravity is my friend. I have my yarn that is what wrapped around my cardboard tube. I'll set that on the floor. And then I like to put a finger in between these two strands so that they stay separated, because as you can see, even here, maybe you can see, they start twisting around each other pretty quick. You want to try to control that as much as possible. So just like last week, we put our leader yarn through here. And this time, instead of spinning our spindle clockwise to Z twist, you have to spin counterclockwise to S twist. So I'm going to add some twist to that by spinning counterclockwise. And then I'm going to park my spindle, open up this top loop of my leader, and then I'm going to just pull those two plies of my yarn through and kind of hold them in place. And they just naturally start wanting to twist around each other at the top. So I'll add a little more S twist. And then wrap my yarn around the spindle. I don't know if you guys can hear it. You probably can't. My cat is snoring like a grizzly bear over here. And just like with the spinning, you hook the yarn up in the hook and then give a nice little spin counterclockwise, and the yarns start plying around each other. This goes a lot faster than when you are spinning your singles. And over here on the side, since I'm not using much yarn to ply with, so I'm not getting quite as much of a gravity assist, my yarns are kind of tangling up around each other a little. But I'm trying to get that close. You can see how the two colors are twisting around each other. And we'll wrap it around the spindle. And it takes a little bit of practice here because the yarns really do want to twist around each other. So keeping yourself from getting a tangled mess can be kind of tricky, especially on a drop spindle where you're moving a little bit slower. On my wheel, I have my yarn is wound around a bobbin on my Lazy Kate, so it stays separated a little bit easier. One thing I always have to be careful of too when I'm plying, particularly sometimes when I'm just spinning singles, but I tend to want to spin as long as I can without wrapping the yarn around my spindle, and it gets farther apart than my arms are long, which can be a problem. So you can't reach to twist things up. Hey Lois, you should get your spindle out, and when life gets back to normal again, maybe we can get together and do a little lesson, because drop spinning really is kind of fun. And wrap around. And the real trick too is you want the twist in your yarn to be consistent ultimately. I mean, that's probably what most of us are going to. You can spin art yarn and that's fine too. And you can have, twistier in some places and less twist in others. Whoops, I just spun the wrong direction. All my twist came out. Make sure to spin counterclockwise. But yeah, ultimately, and it just takes practice, you want to make sure your twist is nice and even. So it's supposed to be like a bajillion degrees today here in Tucson. So what is everyone doing to keep cool today? Hiding in your house, obviously. So that's the basics of how to spin on a drop spindle. Now, if I'm talented enough here to do it on camera, let's try some fancy plying on a drop spindle. So in this case, I was using two different singles to make a single strand of yarn that was plied together. There's another way to ply, and we were talking about this yesterday in my knitting group when we were chatting online, and that is to chain ply. And chain plying means you're taking one single, you're basically making a crochet chain with big long loops with your hands, and then you're adding twist, and twist is like the glue that holds everything together. And it makes, from a single ply of yarn, you end up with a 3-ply yarn. And it's kind of a cool process, but I know how to do it and I can do it very well on my wheel. Doing it on a drop spindle adds a whole new twist, no pun intended. So I have a project I'm actually working on here for reals, not just a sample project on my Turkish spindle. I'm spinning up some yarn that my friend Sandy dyed for me. So the Turkish spindle comes apart, so I pulled out the center shaft, and then you can pull out each of the legs, and you end up with this delightful little center pull ball of yarn, and that's what I'm going to ply from. So I have already started plying some with a chain ply on my other Turkish spindle. We'll see if I can connect the two together. That's really the trick now, isn't it? So this is almost like my leader. except it's already started on my spindle. I'm going to unwind just a little bit here. We were also talking yesterday in my knitting group about chain plying. And a lot of times you'll see this called Navajo plying, and it's not necessarily a term, Navajo plying. It's my understanding that it is not something that Navajo people really like us using that term. So chain plying is what I'll be using. So I set my single down in my yarn bowl. I still have the leader here from when I started spinning this single. I'm going to actually just pull that leader off because I don't need to ply that into my yarn. I'll just drop it to the side here, out of the way. And then I have my single on the other side. It's gotten a little crazy and fluffy too, so I'm going to pop the end off that as well. End up making a loop right here. So I'm just pinching the end in to the yarn. I'm making a loop right here, and then I'm going to pull my single through and hold it to get things started. We'll add some S-twist to get that all together. I end up with a little bit of a 4-ply there right at the beginning. I'm going to park my spindle. I have my loop of yarn around my hand. I'm going to grab my single and pull it through the loop, wrap it around my hand, and then pinch it and spin. And again, just like for the regular plying, for chain plying, you're still doing an S-twist. So I'm going to park it, pull another loop through, pinch it in place. And even though I don't usually use the park and draft method when I'm doing my singles, when I'm chain plying, I do, because otherwise it starts plying so fast I can't make the chain with my hand. So I have a nice length here. It's time to wind it onto my spindle. And with Turkish spindles, you don't wind around the shaft. Instead, you're winding your yarn around these 4 legs that are around the spindle. So you go diagonally over 2 legs and then under 1. Over 2 and under 1. Over 2, under 1. Around and around. And I really like to try to wrap my Turkish spindle as neatly as I can because it holds a lot of yarn that way, and it makes that center pull ball a little bit more sturdy so it doesn't collapse on itself. So again, I have my loop around my hand. I'm going to pull the yarn through. So really the loop here made 2 strands. This part of the loop is a 3rd strand. So I'm applying those 3 strands together. Spin counterclockwise. Pull another loop through. And this one definitely takes some practice and mental patience. So next week, instead of spinning, I think we're going to get back to doing some knitting. My friend Sandy had a really good idea for a topic. I think it was Sandy, and couple of other people have emailed me also about it, and they would like to have a lesson on how to fix mistakes in your knitting. So we're going to talk about how to tink backwards, which is, the easiest way to fix mistakes, but I'll also show you how to fix mistakes down a column. And we'll ladder down one column, and we'll try to ladder down multiple columns, and I'll show you what happens. It's kind of cool. It's a little scary the first time that you're doing it, but ultimately, I'm one of those people. I like my mistakes fixed in my knitting. I don't like to leave them in. So for me, it's worth the time to go back and fix stuff. And my local friends all know that in addition to fixing mistakes, that I have no problem whatsoever if I am knitting stuff and I am not happy with what's going on. I have no problem just ripping it out and starting over. But if it's just a small mistake, it's a lot easier to just fix the mistake instead of ripping out a whole sweater or whole project. And my friend Diana says me too. Yes, we often are at the yarn shop and neither of us have any problem whatsoever. If you're not happy, just rip it out. When in doubt, rip it out. Because I don't want to keep working on a project that I'm not enjoying. If you have any other ideas for topics that you'd like to see in the future, you can leave them in the comments under this video. They won't be available till after the live broadcast is done, but you can leave them there. Or you can head over to my website, thechilidog.com, and all my contact information is there with my email address and my social media profiles. And you're welcome to leave a message on my social media. I might be a little slow getting back to it because I'm hoping to take a couple days off here and not check my computer and do any work. Or you can send me an email, and I love hearing from folks by email. I'm a little bit better about getting back to those in a timely manner. But yeah, if you have any ideas for future topics you'd like to see me demonstrate, just let me know and we will try to give it a go here since we might be doing the live lessons for a while. See you later, Tess. So it looks like it's been about a half an hour, and that's usually my goal here. So I think we'll get ready to sign off, set down my knitting here, or my spinning here a minute, and we'll see if I can drag my cat over to say hi real quick before we go. So I really appreciate you guys all joining me today, and I hope you'll join me again next week, and we'll, like I said, we'll correct some mistakes, learn how to correct mistakes, because it's really a handy skill to have in knitting. Set my spinning there. Let's see if the chili dog's cool cat, Dobby, will wake up enough to come over. Oh, we'll just lift the basket. I was commenting to my husband the other day that the cat has a towel in the bottom of this basket just for comfort, I guess. And that I was thinking about replacing it with a crocheted Plying mat. We made Plying a couple weeks ago in one of the live lessons. And for some reason, the cat, I've had some plastic bags sitting around waiting to make a project with them. And the cat has been obsessed on sleeping with them lately. So I might make her a little Plying crocheted mat to go in the bottom of the basket since she seems to like it so much. And yeah, this is what she does all day long. So thank you so much for joining me, guys. I hope you have a great weekend. Stay safe. And until next Saturday, have a good one.